No. Don't you dare.
Hey everyone. I apparently can't do the cheesy introduction anymore. But welcome back. This is going to be the last episode of the series, and we've got a special guest on that I've known for a short while, but we've come to know her. She's a family friend now, and her name's Ive. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Just say hi, hello, and which part of the earth you come from?
Yeah, basically.
Hi, I'm Beta. I'm Pakistani, but I've lived in the Middle East and Canada, and I've been in Australia for the last little while.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So can I also explain that she brings along a different perspective, like our initial guest, Kirsty. She's married, and we're not. We've got a lot to learn. And so again, we've discussed a lot of things over the past few episodes. We've discussed the nightclub life, the girlfriend-boyfriend life. We've discussed intercultural marriages. We've discussed why someone should wait. Why
waiting is a wrong word.
Yes, that was discussed as well. One should actually take his time by himself. Not time physically, but take some moment.
Work on himself.
Work on themselves, you know, and all of that stuff. So we discussed all of this stuff, and again, last episode you guys would have seen things got heated up between our guests.
It wasn't heated, which is a
very
good discussion.
heated. Drama was stirred.
A good discussion.
It was a great discussion, and I thought we'd bring upon those kinds of discussions with our new guest, where I put forward problems that people would come across when they want to step into getting married, or they feel like they're ready, or they don't know if they're ready. You know, people that just don't know, and people that feel like they know. So, question one is, how does one tell himself that he's ready? When it comes to, say, you know, I found someone, I think I like this person, and let's say the kid's 12 years old. He feels like he likes this person. It's just a question. I'm critiquing things. I'm going to be a critique today. So let's just say...
That's too much of a devil's advocate, man.
Regardless, how do you tell? You know, you're going to come across these things. Your kids are going to come up to you one day. Dad, I like someone. You know, what are you going to tell this person if you think that person's not ready? How do you go about that? So let's say a 12-year-old kid comes up and he says, Dad, I think I'm ready. I want to get married. What do you guys say to that person?
No. So, okay, are you trying to say, well, how do you differentiate between like a 12-year-old who's saying I'm ready for it and like an older person who's actually ready?
Yeah, like how does one go about all of this stuff? I'm just going to critique it all. So you guys tell me.
At the age of 12, I don't think you have that, like, you can't be deemed competent in any medical manner. So I'm not even gonna like
in legality.
But that's what I'm saying. The kid's gonna say to you, "No, Dad, I'm ready."
He's not even a teenager.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say he's at 16. Let's say 16. Let's just say 16. Let's change the date.
They still want to be in capacity.
That doesn't matter. Fine. Look. Islam has a different set of kind of restrictions for when you're able to get married, and that's pretty much just puberty. But we know emotional intelligence varies. It varies between females and males. So females mature much earlier from an emotional point of view than males do. And depending on where you are in your maturity, you may or may not be ready for marriage. I think there's actually like quite a few components for what would make you feel ready. I think you have to be emotionally stable. Whereas,
how does one get to that? How does one say I'm emotionally stable? Because everyone has the right to feel sad. Everyone has the right to feel down, and you know, and you just might never know if you're emotionally ready for what comes next.
So I guess, like, how do you define that?
Yeah, how do you define that? How do you define emotional stability?
Do you think you're emotionally stable? Is what he's asking.
Look, I think as a disclaimer, I don't think you can ever be 100% ready for what's to come, because part of marriage is that experience of growing and compromise and learning how to be in a relationship with somebody else. So you can never be 100% ready. In terms of when are you emotionally ready, it's kind of when you feel like you can take on somebody else's responsibility, or you're mature enough to know what you can compromise on, or you have very strict not strict, but like you have values defined that you can draw back on and be like, this is my comfort zone, and I'm willing to do certain things for another person, but I would never do something else for them.
I agree with that, because basically what we talked about on the first episode was
Let's
like
say defining values. I'm gonna pick on that.
Alright.
You will never know everything about yourself, even till the day
Absolutely.
you die. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
your values are going to continue to
Yeah.
develop. You're going to learn new things. Like, okay, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I'm going to add that to my value list. Okay,
Yeah.
this is something that I value. I'm not going to do this. So what's your
There's
value?
there's a difference between growing and having a baseline value system. That's kind of things that you're taught when you're younger, or you choose to follow or choose to pursue in your life. So you'll have a certain set of values. Okay, this is like, I'm choosing to be a Muslim, or I'm choosing whatever faith, and that's my baseline. So when I have actively decided, this is just from my experience, when I actively decided I am choosing to follow Islam rather than something that I was taught or something that I'm just following because I have to, that's when I chose my value system. I chose that these are my set moral standards. I cannot negotiate on this.
So let's say,
Yeah.
sorry for butting in. So let's say someone says, let's say all of us, we're all Muslim. We all define ourselves as Muslim.
Yeah.
Let's say you're a Christian.
Yeah.
Right? And as a Christian, I think I believe in Jesus, Father, Holy Spirit, and all that stuff. And I confidently believe in that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean my value system might not change down the line.
So for me, when I chose Islam, I chose it as like, this is it. There's not much that I'm willing to compromise on. And not everyone is like that. Not everyone is religious. I've got plenty of friends who aren't religious, but they still have a value system. To say that you don't, you would be a morally corrupt person if you didn't have any values. So for people who are atheists or don't believe in anything, they would have a value system of family, like these are certain moral conducts I have to do to be deemed a good person or be contributing to society. They might just define that. You know, I've seen my parents be good people, and that's kind of the person I want to be.
Do you think one should write down those? So, you know, just to kind of understand himself as well. Like, okay, what are my morals? So he takes his time to sit down and say, okay, my morals are, I want to have a good family. What does good family look like? Good family looks like mother, father, sister, brother, grandfather, mother, and this is my family. You know, and maybe write those things down. Is that what do you think?
No, not that way. Like you were saying, first of all, you got to define what it is, right? So
that's what I'm saying. How do you define it? Like, do you write it down? Do you just think about it in your head?
You just know it. I think like one way to put it properly is like your values are like your foundations of your building. If your foundation is not right, then you can't build yourself as a person. So when you're as a child, obviously you don't know. You're searching for your values, but then over time, when you're an adult or whatever, then you build on your values, and then you become a person that you are.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
because you can say to yourself, "I subconsciously know these values," right?
I think it's a good way to write it down.
So should someone write it down?
Not write it down, just contemplate. Right? That's one.
That's what I'm saying.
Actively
think about it. Yeah, and like Rita was saying before, right? So where it's having like the base values, right? Understanding, okay, family, this, that's it, right? And I think what you're going on was like, you can learn more about it and what it is over time, but that is still your value, right? So defining what family is, right? So at the start, you might think, okay, this is family to me. And then later on, you might think, okay, no, this is family to me. But in the end, your value is still family. Was that what you're going with? Or was that just,
yeah.
So that's what, but I'm trying to say is, should one, right? Because again, I might think, family is this, family is that, but I haven't concretely written down something that I actually believe in. It's just subconscious.
Maybe not like writing it down, maybe like reflecting upon it, like often. Like you said, like you chose Islam as your value that you won't maybe, you know, compromise on. So obviously on that fact, you reflect upon it, why I have taken this choice, blah, blah, blah. And that obviously, you know, makes you come closer to your value. So I think with those, like with Christianity, some other person might value that. So they might research upon that. They might, you know, use that as a stronghold for whatever decision they make in the future. So just actively reflect instead of just writing, because writing won't.
Okay, let's say you get to know your values. Okay, you know your values. You know that you believe in Islam. What does that do? How does that make you ready for anything?
For me, it sets up a moral guide to how I want to live my life, and it's easier if you follow whatever religion you follow, because most of those guidelines are then kind of set for you, and you don't have to there's more contemplative work if you don't have that framework set out for you. So if I was an atheist, I think it would be a much more challenging experience to define those values than it is for me being a person of faith, because those values are essentially defined for me, and I have kind of a path. It's like, this is what is deemed right and this is what's deemed wrong. So follow that.
Within your own faith, there can be disagreements.
Yes, there can be.
Some person might believe music is good. Some person might believe music is not good. Some person might actually believe eating pork is okay for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So how does one say, okay, you define yourself as, let's say, the person that believes in the same faith that I believe in.
Yeah.
Do you judge the person beforehand? Do you say, okay, your values and my aliens?
Continue.
Yeah, I get that. We are going off topic. I get that. But yeah, so in that there might still be disagreements. So, so I guess there might be those core values within your faith that you don't want to compromise on.
Yeah.
Everything else can be a discussion.
And it's a learning process, like Taha said.
Cool.
It's a learning process.
Cool. And you were mentioning a book that you also read a while back. Let's just dive into that conversation. Let's just do it.
Sure. So I don't think my husband did this, but I did. I certainly so I did a couple of a thing before I got married, and then after I got married as well. So I did it wasn't premarital counseling, but it's a course on Al-Kauthar, and it talks about marriage, and it just defines
the Twins of Faith.
So that's the conference. They have a course about marriage. It's called Home Sweet Home. So it kind of defines the values of that Islam encourages in a marriage. And I think I've had friends who've done Christian premarital counseling with their pastor, and they discuss different issues that come in marriage. And one of the things in that course was like, obviously defining love. How
is it a full course or is it a course?
It's a course. So I mean, it's an online course with 6 sections. So it's not heaps of time. Okay. It just helps kind of that reflection process of what you should be going into.
Or you expect something like that.
Yeah, and obviously it's a big change, and given that my parents are immigrants, this is not something that they have done or would be interested in doing.
They're married.
So I guess just try to understand. Is it like a course that helps you reflect and understand what you're stepping into?
Yeah, things to expect from in marriage, and how to avoid conflicts, or how to deal with conflicts, or having talked about certain trigger topics. Like I mentioned, money is a big issue for divorces in the Western, in any capacity, really. So talking about money, talking about how you were raised. So how you were raised and what example of marriage you had in front of you is very heavily going to reflect on your relationship as well. Mm-hmm. So exploring those things about you and knowing what's happening. I mean, and just really simple things. Like one of the things was, as a Muslim, I've never shared a bed with somebody else. And it was like, what kind of mattress do you want? Do you want a hard mattress or a soft mattress? Can you sleep in a really soft mattress? If you physically can't do that,
wouldn't you know what mattress you sleep in?
No, your partner.
Yeah, that's the other part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just really simple stuff.
So like you go on the date, you're like, okay, what mattress do you prefer?
So is this like stuff that they tell you to talk about with your partner to basically like have it down packed, or is this like, you just have to reflect on it yourself?
I mean, you can do it in both. And like they certainly encourage it in a halal way to like do it with, I mean, I'm sure you can have that conversation in front of your parents too. What kind of mattress do you like? But
discuss with your parents.
No, like
you can
with your partner in front of So yeah, but the point is just to encourage conversation and to have realistic expectations. No one's perfect, and so that was really good because my husband and I had talked about money, and what our goals would be. For example, we always knew realistically that he was going to care for his parents, and that they were going to live with us when they're elderly, and that was a defined thing. We're like, cool, that's happy, that's done. Yeah. And if we hadn't, and this was somehow thrust upon me, it'd be like, whoa, that's a huge undertaking. Whereas I'm like, I know this is happening. I want to prepare for it. I want to do everything I can to be ready for this thing that's going to happen in my life. So having those conversations, I think, not keeping anybody in the dark about issues, and just a lot of self-reflection on your own. And you're never going to be fully ready for what's to come. Marriage can be one of the most beautiful relationships in your life. I'm not a mom, so I can't comment on that, but it can also have like really low lows. Like you can be like, why did I do this? It doesn't take away from the love. It's just, I think God truly blesses a relationship between a husband and a wife, and it doesn't compare to anything else, any other relationship of mine.
I guess when you're doing the course and it's helping you reflect and stuff, you might be like, oh yeah, I'll be able to compromise, I'll be able to do this, take that. And then when you're emotionally put into that situation, you're like, oh, okay, I did not expect this much emotion.
That's what I was going to say. Have you been put in a situation where you've come across something that was in that course and have you applied it? That's my other thing.
It's like, okay, we're going through an argument right now. Let's sit and talk.
So with that course, did it tell you like how to resolve arguments and stuff like that?
A little bit. It probably didn't do the greatest job of that. So I'll talk about what I was going to in a second. But so just in terms of things, from what I've learned from that course, certainly having those discussions really early on was helpful. Also remembering to take a step back when you're angry, to kind of preserve that relationship. And yeah, it's a while ago. It was like 3.5 years ago. So I'm like pulling on strings here. But really, in terms of the argument part, I think we actually really learned how to argue well. And it's still a work in progress. It sounds like I'm always arguing with my husband, but I'm not. But so there'll be couples that like never fight, and then there'll be couples that fight all the time, and then then you can always escalate it up into verbally abusive and physically abusive. But I'm just gonna roll it back to just in terms of how you argue. So I read a book called The 7 Principles of Marriage. I think it's by John Gotham, and he's a psychologist who talks about how. I think he has a ridiculous 90-something% rate of determining whether or not a couple is going to stay together or get divorced. And he goes through things that you do emotionally to keep your partner close to you or distance yourself from them. So he goes through responding to subtle cues. So for example, if my husband wants to show me a meme and I'm busy doing something else, I'd be like, oh, no, whatever, I'm not looking at it right now. Or I could just look and be like, oh yeah. Or I'd be like, oh, that's really funny. Wow. Do you think we can keep scrolling or something like that? So that's 3 different responses you have. Yeah. And obviously the more you do of the third one where you're engaging in those little moments, that is actually kind of like a bank. So you're depositing points in there going, I care about you. And I'm showing interest in the things that you are interested in. Okay. And then if I'm ignoring you, he's not going to want to show me the next meme, even though he finds it really funny. And that creates a distance between the couple.
So it's like the little moments.
It's the little moments. So there's that. Also in terms of so what those little moments does, it develops a bank deposit. So when you're arguing, if you're in a very loved and comfortable position, you're going to be like, all right, I'll let this one go because I know you still love me. But if I'm like, I'm working on a flat slate and, I don't have anything to work with, then I'm going to be like, oh, you did that. That's really irritating. And I'm going to nitpick everything and everything else is going to affect you a lot more. And then he talks about how to fight as well. So, I shut down in an argument, and that's not very healthy. The healthy thing would be to say, hey, let's just take a moment, take a break, sit apart, cool down for like 10 minutes. We'll come back and then we'll talk about it, and we'll both have a much more mature conversation than when you're angry and heated and things like that. So he goes through a lot of the psychological principles of marriage and relationship, which I think is an excellent read.
So I get that as well, because I saw one video where, like, I guess it's also on that point, like, okay, if showing that meme or whatever, and then you don't show interest, you might still, like, you know, love him and everything like that. It's just at that time you might not be like in the mood and you're doing something else, right? So I saw this one thing where this girl was basically saying that, you know, she was basically dating with this other guy, but like eventually the guy broke up with her, and the reason, like, his reason was like, oh, you just didn't seem interested. But then she said, I was like really interested, but the fact was I never showed that interest, and so that's why the other person perceived it that way. And I guess that's one way arguments would come about. But the other thing is, I wanted to get onto it. So you said there's couples. You said there's couples which argue. There's some couples who just argue a bit, like, or a lot, and, you know, gets like different levels. You also said there's couples which don't argue, right? Have you come across those couples? That's my question.
I probably haven't, but people say, and that's kind of what I would say. I'm sure there are people who are very much love each other and adore each other.
Because the reason why I was saying was because in the last podcast, right? Yeah. Me and my other friend were arguing about. Okay, so would you say the perfect relationship is where you, like, you don't argue with your spouse and you just, like, 100% all the time, like. Okay, there's obviously stuff happens in your life where, you know, there's still drama or whatever, but in the end, you two are like happy, right? Yeah. Would you say that's a perfect relationship?
Like with arguments or without arguments?
No, like, okay.
We're going off topic.
I just want to ask her opinion, that's all. I just want to ask her opinion.
Yeah.
What's a perfect relationship?
Okay. What's your idea of a perfect relationship?
I think when you have more happy moments than not happy moments, that's it.
There you go. Okay. Dynamic balance. You will have bad moments.
I never said, okay, because what I said was, you know, the perfect relationship was if there's, like, no real, like, obviously, you know, there's some disagreements. I'm not saying there's not. Like, there's two people, 100% going to be disagreements. But I mean, like, big fights aren't really going to happen that much. Maybe, like, once a year or something. Like, no, not like actual fights. But, like, big arguments are only going to happen maybe once a year, right? And the rest of the time it's going to be happy, you know, maybe some disagreements. That's my idea of a happy, like, a relationship. And I say, you know, it'd be hopeful. I'd be okay if that was what came to me, like, from the get-go. Yeah. And then my friend was telling me, no, you never ever receive that. You'll start to go through hardships first, and then you'll eventually get there, maybe. And then that's what I'm just trying to get your opinion on.
I think there's a balance. I think you'll find if you find
that balance.
Yeah, so part of doing the whole premarital stuff and finding whether you're mature enough, all of those is kind of a stepwise process to realize whether or not you're actually compatible with each other. And so if you have your big values are aligned, if you're like, all right, I agree, this is how I want to live my life, and this is how you want to live our life. And our big things are family values, and I say money again because it really is one of the reasons why people get divorced. So family values, money, religion, how you want to raise your kids. If you've got those values defined, then you find it much easier because those are not then big arguments. Everything beyond that will be relatively small in comparison to the grand scheme of things. In the heated moment, you're not going to feel that way, but if you kind of
be in sync.
Yeah. So if you kind of zoom out of that, you realize that it's all really just little petty
arguments.
So let's step back for a second, right?
Yeah.
Zoom out.
We went into, you know, going into actually analyzing if you're ready, and, you know, you can attend courses, you can read books, you can start reflecting and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Let's say you did all of that, right?
Yeah.
And you said to yourself, I'm mature enough to step forward. How about then the obstacles on the outside start to tell you you're not ready? Or if the obstacles on the outside start to tell you her values don't align with yours, or if the outside people start to tell you it won't work, and everyone on the outside is telling you, like, majority of the outside world is telling you it will never work, you're blinded. Well then, you know, because people get into situations where they are in relationships and they're like, I want to get married, and then when they want to take that step, every other factor starts to kick in. because it's a big step. It's not just now. It's not just you and that person anymore, and it's a big step. So now you start to get all the negative vibes around you.
Yeah.
That 16-year-old or 18-year-old might actually think he's ready. He might actually be mature enough to actually take that next step. But the people around him actually, because people don't see what's going on internally, they just see your actions.
Yeah.
They just see this guy wakes up at 10 o'clock. This guy doesn't care about his studies or his education. And people see these things.
They assume.
They assume these things. How do you deal with that? How does one take his decision and keep those people happy too?
Should you be considerate of those people, or
is that possible?
Did you face any negative people? Not negative people, but like any negative comments, like anyone who was saying like who's against, sorry, like you and thing getting married. Was there anyone against it or anything like that?
Probably
we come from different ethnicities. We have the same religion, but we're from different ethnicities that are actually have had a historical violence between the two. And my husband's family was directly affected by people from my ethnicity having burnt houses down and all of that. So there's a lot of emotional family trauma that's associated with on both sides. But I think these are just kind of their biases that exist in this world, and everyone forms their values from either experiences or having heard about experiences. And they have a valid reason to have those opinions. But I think like when you overcome that bias, you develop as a person and you develop together as well. So I think it's...
How do you overcome that bias?
Can you overcome that bias, or do you end up needing to make a decision that will hurt someone and then you later on prove them wrong? Or you prove them that it was actually the right step, and you initially actually have to take that decision because you internally know it's right. Is there that win-win situation all the time?
I don't think it's a one and all answer.
Yeah.
I think in each situation, something or the other. I've seen in my friends, I've seen both occur where people have done what they wanted to and chosen to get married with this partner. And it's kind of worked out really well for them. Alternatively, I've seen the opposite end where they've chosen to not pursue and got married to someone else, and they're very happy with their current partners. And I mean, it just depends. I know because my faith is kind of where my values lie. And Islam says that if there is a Muslim woman and a Muslim man who want to marry, and people are not letting them get married, then there will be fitna in this world. And I truly believe that's the word of God.
Yeah.
And
is it possibly because the people around you, let's say, that their negative feelings is because their values do not align with your bunch of values that you have, and that's why there's that sort of tension? Could that be translated in that sort of way?
Like, potentially. I mean, yeah, my parents are immigrants. Their worldview is very different than what mine is. But I can understand where they're coming from, and potentially. Like, it's different for everyone.
I want to just get your opinion on one thing as well. Do you think two people of like different ethnicities, could just get together as well? Because a lot of people nowadays, anyway, it's like they tend to
closed bubble sort of thing. Yeah,
and like sometimes it tends to be because like their own reasons, right? Which is perfectly fine. Like nothing wrong with that. But sometimes they're forced to marry someone of their own ethnicity because of like outside factors. Let's just say that. But do you think it's basically okay, or like do you like what's your opinion on those type of marriages?
On interracial marriages? I don't think there's any issue with that. I think you have to accept that there are going to be challenges. Culturally, there will be challenges. Communication might be a barrier. I learned another language, not because my husband's family can't speak my language, but because I wanted to make an effort. And and I can understand. I can't speak, but but I can carry a conversation, and that was so I can communicate better with everybody, and I just
And do you think so? Okay, another question, right? So the question would be, marriages within cultures. Let's say everyone's happy with it, everyone's supporting it, and you know, you actually, you know, whatever people actually want marriage within the same cultures, within the same beliefs, within the same race, culture, and all of that stuff, right? Same language.
Yeah.
Would we say that that's an easier pathway than a marriage that's intercultural, or is it actually on the same level?
It'll be easy.
It's easier. It's way easier.
Is it?
It's way easier.
Because you can just get arranged marriage done.
No,
No.
Do you get the question though, right? So the question
Repeat.
the question is it easier on the marriage, on the two people that are getting
on
married?
the marriage itself.
On the marriage itself. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, two people, different cultures, different language, but they can speak to each other. Two people, same religion, same culture, same language, get married.
I think it's the same.
You reckon it's the same?
I reckon it's the same.
You reckon it's the same?
I reckon it's different.
I reckon it's different.
Yeah.
I think
Different problems or more difficult?
It
can be both.
Can be both.
I think it boils down to communication, because like if let's say the two people from same ethnicity or whatever, right? One person could be really bad at communication, and that will boil down to two different cultures totally.
No, not that. I'd say it's okay for the cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
So let's say I know the interracial one, whatever. So you're saying two different people from two different races getting married, or two people from like the same race getting married, right?
Yeah, like two different cultures getting married. You know? There's
It's gonna be 100% different because
it's gonna be different, but I'm saying on the level when you get to understand the problems that come along with marriage, would those problems be like kind of
it's
balanced
different. No.
out?
The reason why I say that is because there will be problems created because there is like because you're marrying from like a different race, right?
Yeah.
There'll be different problems you gotta face.
It'd be
right?
different problems, but I'm saying okay. So what I'm saying is, you might have two problems with two different solutions, but they're equally as hard or as easy as each other. Is that, you get what I'm saying? So if let's say you're married to the same race, you have different problems. That a person that is married with two different cultures
This
will have
problem's
different.
harder than
Would they be
these-
harder, or would they be on the same plateau? You
Hard.
just have to kind of solve them together.
Harder.
You reckon
Because
it'll be harder?
the reason why I say this is because if you're marrying from two different races, okay, and like obviously like we were saying before, it's like she learns a different language, so obviously understand the family, right? Even though your husband can understand you perfectly, right? So you gotta basically, I'd say anyway, me personally, I don't know, my opinion, you gotta basically also take the other person's family into account, right? And the problems that can arise from that as well. So the parents want something, right? And if in that person's culture it's like, okay, parents do this, then that might create one whole new problem, right? And I'd say that when you take, because some cultures, they take other people into consideration like a lot more as well, right? So depending on the race, I don't want to give examples. That's the hard thing.
Go person A, person B.
Okay, so couple A, right, are from the same race, right? Their parents have like the same idea of what's gonna happen. Like, okay, so let's say they think, okay, the husband was the one who like maintains most of this, whatever, and then that like they all can agree on the same thing, the families. But then if it's like a two different races, family A could be like, okay, so this is how the relationship's gonna go.
Family A does something.
Family B is gonna say, no, this. And then that's also going to put so much pressure on the two people in that marriage to kind of please their family as well. And
I guess it's a tougher test, you could say.
I think marriage is tough already because you're trying to get to know the other person and how to live with them. And then there's additional pressure of trying to sort your relationship out with this person, but also with the added pressure of maybe the family or society around you putting pressure on your relationship. So it's extra stress, which may or may not work for different couples. But
I have a question. So for everyone, obviously. So with like, I was having a discussion with a couple other mates of mine. The perspective on marriage I'm just generalizing at least, in today's society is very looked down upon, from what I'm getting at least. in the sense that, you know, you're scared of divorce, you're scared of, you know, there's so many things that could go wrong, the potential of, you know, the calamities that could occur, they're so severe that they just rather be, you know, like girlfriend, boyfriend or whatever. So like another perspective one of my mates was bringing about was the involvement of the government in one way, and they perceive that as a negative thing. Like, how would you respond to that?
Sorry, what do you mean the government?
As in, like, you know, it's a contractual thing, like marriage. So how would you? Because a lot of people think like, oh, you know, is the government involving or whatever. The contract is legally binding. That's
but a de facto relationship is legally binding, even though it's not a defined contract. And the government views it as such, and you have rights within that relationship. And you don't even need to have a joint account. You can have the same residential address, and that's enough for the government to consider that as a long-term relationship that works the same. So I don't think
that's a myth that obviously needs to be gone.
What's the question?
Because like some people are afraid of like divorce, right? Because they think, okay, if I get into a marriage and we get divorced, the government's gonna kick in, and then then there's a contract that's basically this.
I don't think we should define marriage by the government being needed.
Exactly, that's the reason.
That's what people are saying. But then, okay, like
it shouldn't be.
It's you might get benefits with it, I guess.
No.
So you don't get any benefits? Zero benefits with it? Okay, my bad.
I sent the link, I'm sorry.
It's just
no, okay, so
you wish.
Oh man.
is it like
Tax deductions.
if you get divorced and you have
Wife
kids as well,
wanted this.
if you have kids, sometimes like so when you go to court and stuff like that, that's
and the stigma around divorce and like how that prevents marriage. So how would you respond to that? What do you think about it?
Ready or what?
What'd you say?
you got a plan ready, basically.
No. Anyways,
have a backup plan just in case, I reckon.
No, I mean,
You got a few partners already waiting in line.
Astaghfirullah. I don't think there's any guarantee in a relationship, but I do think that if you have the right intentions, God will bless your marriage, and maybe that's coming from a more spiritual side of it. But I think the relationship between two people, and if it's done within the sanctity of religion and God, it's God. I think there's a blessing in that relationship that you just can't compare. I don't have words to explain how beautiful it can be. So the fear of it ending badly would not deter me from the beauty of it. So I mean, but that's kind of that. There can be fear in everything in life, and I think you would have to go back to your value system and see how secure you actually are.
And I guess it would be with the value before you get into something, and that would be a conversation. What's your views on that when it comes to divorce? And that would be one of your value systems that you would discuss beforehand with that person that you would get into. So I guess if you share the same values, that would be the very, very, very last resort. Very, very last resort.
Because love should overshadow that sort of stuff.
Like in our faith, it is permissible.
Yes.
Divorce is permissible. It's not like it's not permissible. So there are circumstances where things like that happen. And so and who's right, who's wrong in that relationship? Only God knows best there, you know? Like but it happens. Divorce is allowed. It shouldn't be looked as something that is in our faith haram, you know, like completely
it shouldn't be first in line either. It needs to be absolutely
it's last thing, but it is prohibited. It's not prohibited, you know. So
I agree. I think in one of their value systems, I think my husband and I decided that there was absolutely no way we were going to ever get divorced. Even if we hated each other, the only reason we would be like some very clear defined red lines. So obviously like there, you know, like adultery or like things that we're never going to do, but those clear defined red lines, and we're like, no, this is not even an option for us to do in the future. So even if we're mad at each other, it's kind of like, all right, whatever it is, we have to deal with it together. We're a team. This is it.
So let's summarize the episode. Started off with, okay, how does one actually, say he's ready? What's all of that stuff? We said you gotta be ready. You gotta actually define your values and whatnot. And then we went on to, you can take courses, you can
premarital.
I can't even say the word.
Basically,
understand what you're getting into, and you can discuss with people. You can take your time in understanding that.
Yeah.
And so you get to a point where you actually understand your values, at that point in time. And your values are always continuing, but there'd be those core values that you wouldn't go back on. Let's say killing someone, you wouldn't do it,
Yeah,
but anyways, you'd have those core values that you wouldn't, go against regardless of what's happening in your life. Second point that we got to was, okay, let's say you understand your values, but then everyone around you was like, you're not ready. And then at that point, we agreed to say you have to actually stick by your values at that point. No matter what's going on around you, you have to stick by your values, right? So you have to make a decision that might not seem right to everyone else, but because you
can't make everyone happy.
You can't make everyone happy, but you'd have to stick by your values. You'd have to say, okay, family is very valuable to me, and all of that stuff, and you make those decisions based on that. And then again, that's where the discussion, I guess, led to, and then what happens in a relationship, marriage, divorce, and stigma around that. So we've discussed a lot of things.
I just want to leave on one note, which the main thing I learned from you anyway, like this is basically have that talk.
Have the talk.
Because I think a lot of people are like you said, in front of
halal
parents.
date, that's when you have it.
That's a lot of people are embarrassed to have that talk at that time, right? And obviously then later on they have that talk, but at that time it might be too late and the person might not agree with those same things that you kind of agree with. So I'd say like you said, have the courage to talk about that from the get-go, which I think you did anyway as well, right? And because I think that is basically what defines a relationship, and having those red lines as well, like you said, look, we're going to stay together, right, no matter what, unless this. I think that is the main important thing. And that's the way you basically stay together.
Communication. That's where it's at.
But that's my opinion.
We were supposed to cover another one, but we're
probably
not going to cover it.
That too,
But again, I saw a video by Sheikh Yasser Qadi on love languages. It's really good. But love languages. Again, can we summarize it? He put out a video. I recorded sections. It was hilarious.
It's really so. I fully agree. I think love languages changes your entire relationship. Wow. I think understanding which one you are and how you feel affectionate. Mine is physical touch. So my poor husband has to give me a hug every day. And it's timed. It's not just a pat on the back. It's it has to, No, I'm joking, but he does have to give me hugs every day. So
you're watching this.
Yeah, poor guy. But alternatively, he really values quality time. So then we have chats, and we're both really busy with work. So sometimes it's just a 15-minute chat. So we're not people who go on dates very often or anything like that. But what we do is just sit down and have 15-minute chats between ourselves, and we just talk about cool, this is what happened, or this is what I want to do, and then he does the same. And those 15 minutes are probably more quality time for us and more beneficial for a relationship than whether or not we get dressed up, go out, spend 2 hours outside doing something interesting. For us, that 15 minutes is really, really important. So define whatever it is. So for some people, I think the 5 are gifts, physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, and acts of service. So there's 5. And whichever one it is for you, if you can, your natural inclination might not be for that one. Obviously, it's not for my husband, but
there's a ratio to it, right? So you do feel, I guess, acts of service might be your main one, which you feel loved by, but there will be other factors involved in it as well. If you get a gift once in a while, because that's love
wow.
There will still be a feeling of love in there. It's about understanding that, because quality time isn't okay, let's go on a date now, time's up, let's go on a date. That's not quality time. It's about understanding those languages and how the other person receives them. Another fact to it is love languages aren't just for your marriage.
Yes,
they are for your parents, they are for your friends, and recognizing them really helps your relationship with the people that you're interacting with.
Yes.
So let's say yours is what? Quality time? I think it was.
Quality time and acts of service.
So me spending, 5 minutes in the morning just talking, whatever, it builds that relationship.
Yeah.
Someone else's might be gift. So I know a friend whose love language is just gift. Gifts aren't, giving me something expensive. It's just once upon a time I saw something, I was reminded of you. I thought this would be good.
Yeah.
Here you go. And those build feelings in that person's head that this person cares for me. He's a friend.
Yeah.
Those little moments.
Those little moments.
Yeah.
But
I think this is a topic for another time, and it's a broader topic.
We should have covered that.
We could do. Should we? Question.
I'm for free if you guys wanted to. So
What's the question?
Is it a cut over here?
We'll just ask the question first, and then we see how it goes.
We cut it in some way.
Wait, how
Just ask the question first, and then if it's too big, we just got next episode.
Okay. I think, to be honest, we kind of covered it, which is like, what is the importance of active service? Do you think we covered it?
When did we cover acts of service?
No, the importance of it, which is what you said, basically. Like, you just kind of summarized.
We just did. Again, acts of service would just be, doing things for that other person. Like, let's say in a marriage, if the responsibility that someone else has taken is to, let's say, cook every night. Let's just say someone else actually comes in, your partner comes in and takes that responsibility on for just, let's say, one day. That's an act of service. Taking on some pressure off that other person and doing it without actually being told to do it is an act of service.
Yeah.
And that shows that you appreciate that person. That shows that you care that they put in really hard work. Quality time would be, like you said, just 15-minute conversation where you're not on your phone, you're not distracted with TV or anything. You're just sitting down having a cup of tea, you're talking to the other person. That'd be quality time. Gifts, again, like I said, would be
anything that's memorable.
I guess you took a moment, you remembered the person, and you cherished
something
it.
Significant,
Something significant. Some people like, there's tokens of remembrance. Photo can.
I think one of the things, I think you should also, how you talked about how, your friend, a gift or whatever is not something expensive, right? So I think when I did the test, whatever it was, I didn't pick, my one wasn't gift, right? Because I hate gifts, right? But I don't like
PS5 or not?
Huh? I don't like. That's the thing, if somebody gave me something if you give me a laptop, if you give me a microphone or something even expensive, for me, I'm just gonna be like, oh, thank you. But
I get no. I guess it's because you're receiving something that actually has no value to you. In the sense, you gotta get something. Let's say you've been wanting to get shoes for a long time. You haven't told anyone that, but someone notices that you need shoes, and he's like, you know what? I thought you need these, and here you go. I thought of you, and
I think
you know what I mean.
What you mean.
No, not even that. I wouldn't even want. Not even that.
No, it's something that you actually want, or and you haven't actually verbalized it. Maybe Maybe.
I think that's one part of it. But I think the other part is I want something which somebody has put in a lot of time.
Yeah, that too. That's a gift. That's a gift. That's some place where the person thought of you, put an effort into it, and you value that.
No, more in the sense of if they make me a gift.
Yeah.
I think it differs for everyone, whatever your values
that's
are.
What I'm saying, to understand, because that's why I had mine as act of service, which was that is my act of service. Is they make me something by hand. When somebody takes time.
there was one so I was watching the video by Yasakali yesterday. The words of affirmation, the message to all the men was, don't be honest. Yasakali was like, don't do your grave that early.
Yeah.
Don't be honest.
I mean, there's a reason why Islam says the one person, out of the five people you're allowed to lie to, you are allowed to lie to your partner in certain situations for a certain benefit, and it's to maintain the sanctity of your relationship. And so I fully agree. I'm not the best cook, but the more affirmation I get, the more motivated I am to cook.
Yeah.
So.
But again, those things mean a lot to that other person. You get burnt toast at night time. MashaAllah, this is the best toast. Oh man.
Because I think in Islam, you're not meant to at least for food, you're not meant to say anything's bad.
Yeah, that's just a general thing. But yeah.
So wait, should we critique anything? Is there anything to critique, left to critique? Did we cover everything?
I
think we've covered a lot of things, you know. So from episode 1 to episode now, we've covered a lot of things. You know,
Why get married?
In a sense,
Did we cover that? I think we have.
Why get married?
Yeah, in the first place.
I don't think we haven't covered why we get married, but I guess it's everyone's own decision. People don't need to get married. It's just sunnah. It's recommended.
No, depending for us, it's recommended.
Yeah.
Sunnah.
For
I guess
someone
for
else,
other people, it's their own choice. Like,
it's their own choice.
They want
It's
to
just
spend their
recommended,
life
and it's up to them.
with it, yeah.
You don't need to.
I think I'll add my 2 cents. Humans are just inclined to be in a part of a community. And I think everyone wants to feel loved and to show love. I think that's natural human being characteristics. And whether or not you decide to get married legally or be in a de facto relationship or whatever, I think everyone seeks that love.
Yeah.
So there's...
I agree
and
to
it's
that.
Everyone wants to be loved.
Yeah.
I've seen that as well.
Sweet. I think we've covered a lot of things, and hopefully next topic will be decided amongst our team of people that...
I think that
do
brings
these
us to the end of the season.
Yeah, it brings us to the end of our season. Thank you all for everyone that has viewed all of our videos so far and shared, liked, and reviewed it. Hopefully you guys have liked the series so far. Hopefully you guys have liked the guests that we've brought on. Hope to see you guys next time. But till then, take care.
And also, if there's anything else you guys want us to do, like another series on, just see it in the comments.
100%.